Hey everyone, this is your girl Evelyn.
Hey, welcome. I'm your girl, Lara to the shizzle.
Oh my word, we are so cringe. We are so cringe.
Yeah, no, I'm Lara.
I'm Evelyn, and this is the Once Upon a Naija podcast.
Welcome.
So today we're just going to take it in a more kind of like personalized way and share a little bit or just about who we are and just reflect on the episodes that we've recorded and where we want to go in the podcast, and there'll be a little bit of gisting
because this is going to be our last episode for this season.
Yes,
so we're going to be away from your ears for a while, but we'll be definitely back. But before we go, we just want to leave you with a bit of ourselves, right? So I mean, how have you found the podcasts, the recordings, just starting this journey from when we first had the initial idea of let's do this? From that day, where was it? We went to the city. We went to London Bridge.
We were at London Bridge. It was, those rare days in London where it was sunny and hot.
It was lovely.
And we were walking past Tower Bridge.
Yeah.
And we just took a moment to read a plaque that gave some information about the history of the Tower of London.
Yeah.
And I think we continued walking along the river. And I think you were speaking of your desire to just, do something creative.
Because we were walking past the Tower of London. And I was saying how, isn't it interesting that you're just walking in London and there's all this history just like around you, and that you can just stop and read about something that tells you. I was like, I wish Nigerian history was that accessible. I think that was kind of like part of what sparked the conversation. And I was talking about what I would love to do with history and all this stuff, and obviously I'd written a book by that time about some notable figures in Nigeria. But
and then I was just like, Lara, let's do something. Let's come together and do something. And I think it's been really good actually doing this podcast. It's been a really great way for me to engage and, be a student of Nigerian history, a student of history. And it's been a real pleasure to talk about it with you.
Yeah. No, it's been really good actually, and I think one of the things we both kind of established when we set out to do this was that we're not here to be experts, right? We don't know it all. We know something, we don't know some things, and we just want to share our knowledge and also our journey of discovery. And I think, being a student in this whole process, just trying to top up on some of the things that I know and even learn afresh some things. It's been quite interesting, and I think it's been interesting also being able to share it with people and perhaps be the catalyst for a conversation to happen around certain things, and even perhaps be the people to bring some of these people we've spoken about to the knowledge or to the forefront of people's minds, so I'm really glad we've done it, because it's one thing thinking something, and it's another thing actually like not letting your idea of perfection get in the way.
For sure, because I have been told that I'm a perfectionist. I struggle to accept that, but okay.
I think everyone likes to think there's a bit of perfectionism in them all, but
and so for me, us putting out the episodes, like, we are well aware that, there's always like room for improvement in our production, in, the things that we talk about. There's just so much that can be done. But I think it's just actually having it done is really important. And I think that's been a theme, through the topics we've spoken about. We've spoken about people who just get things done. And, a lot of progress is imperfect.
Yeah, and it was really interesting, like earlier on your mom was saying how, you never know where this might end, and you might get millions of whatever, and it's like, it's nice because you really don't know if everyone knew, if you can see the end from the beginning, whether bad or you just it will forfeit the whole point of the journey of getting there, the learning, the building, the development, the good, the bad, and all the growth that happens along the way. But I'm just glad because one of my mantras from years ago was feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the anxiety, feel the lack of preparedness, but still do it anyway because you never know what opportunities you're preparing yourself for in that process, and we're hoping for big things.
Yeah. You know what it makes me think of? I don't know if you've seen on social media these young boys and they recreate.
Ikorodu boys.
I think that's them.
They recreate films, scenes from films and
Like
things.
Netflix.
Yeah.
And they were just doing what they were doing for the pure joy
Yeah.
of playing make believe, and they don't have these massive budgets to get stuff done, but they've gained so many followers, so much publicity, and you hope that it would benefit them in a way in which they can like improve their lives. But if anything, what I've realized with this and that example is that people actually sometimes care less about the quality of the production, and it's really about the heart and the content. So I'm definitely looking forward to us like improving the quality of the content that we provide to the listeners, and we're definitely like open to feedback and hearing about what the listeners want us to talk about or discuss. So yeah, send us
your ideas. You need to listen to us, guys. You need to share it. You need to share our episodes. If you enjoy anything we've discussed, you need to spread the word, spread the love, and this is how we get the audience, and we're able to also get the things we need for us and get encouraged to continue, because it's important to be encouraged. And I think I have to say that even just like the few listeners that we've had in the last, it's been 10 weeks, 12 weeks now we've been doing this, and just getting comments here and there, just saying, oh, that was a good one, or you could do this better and that. It's really important to get this feedback, and it helps to sometimes affirm what you think is good already, or B, help you to correct and make improvements where necessary. And I think because we invest quite a lot of time in this as well, because that's the thing, like it needs to be, because the kind of time we invest in this, you need to believe in what you're doing, and we believe in what we're doing. We believe in the need for having a history podcast that talks about Nigerian history and just kind of brings it to the forefront. So yeah, I guess that's a nice sort of a segue into introducing our beginnings. And then I'm interested to know though, what's been the most surprising thing you've learned in the last, what's been like the most shocking, or just something that's shocked you or stood out to you
in like the research that
just like in your learnings in the last 12 weeks?
What I've been really impressed by, actually, I think I said in one episodes that I was struggling to find information on. I think it was the Ladi Kwali episode. It was difficult, I think, to find information on her and hear her voice. But doing research for the other episodes, I'm really actually impressed by how Nigerians are documenting their history now. So, for example, reading on the NSARS movement and just simply going to the Wikipedia page, it's really good that I was obviously like alive when this happened, so I can read it and be like, yes, this I remember this did actually happen. And that's one thing that's really like excited me, in that we talk about how we're concerned about there not being maybe an appetite to study Nigerian history, but I think I've actually become a lot more hopeful in that exercises like Wikipedia, where, you have people writing articles, so that we can look back and remember, it has really impressed me, and I'm really grateful for. So that's something that I think has definitely, I'm happily like surprised, or not surprised, but I'm happy to like recognize it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think I'm impressed by how much of that the format is kind of similar to what you've said, but just seeing it being been distributed in different formats. So I've seen quite a few films on events in history. So like we talked about the whole Olebiri, talking about the oil wells that was found and stuff. There's actually, I believe there's a film on Netflix about, not on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, on the Aba women's riot.
Okay.
Yes, I forgot what it's called now, but I watched it. And there's been a few other ones as well. And even just seeing films where they're fictional, but they're kind of like fiction around a particular time in Nigerian stuff. And I'm here for that. Because one of the things I said, at the time when we were thinking of starting this pod is about how making Nigerian history accessible. So like it's good to be able to like just Google and find things, but it's also good to just feel like I can watch a play that is about something random, but in that play I can have a good lesson on Nigeria's history, just get a bit of an exposure to back in those days, this and this happened, that and that happened.
You mentioned Netflix. There's actually going to be another film about a historical figure coming out on Netflix called Amina.
Oh yeah, Amina of Zaria, Queen Amina of Zaria. Yeah. Oh, so it's coming out on Netflix.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for it the other day.
I haven't seen that.
I'm really excited.
I'm excited as well.
Yeah, the quality, the production value looks really good.
Yeah.
And the acting, looks good as well.
Okay.
So that's something I'm definitely excited. Maybe we should be doing some reviews of these historical
films. We should,
films.
when we watch them. Yeah, we should. No, I'm really... Do you know, one of the people that I'd really like to learn more about is Jaja of Okpobo. Queen... I'm not going to get into it, but I just mentioned his name. Yeah, there's so many people. And even like, mythical figures, right? Like, and I feel some type of way, but yeah, so like, like in the Benin tradition or in the Yoruba tradition, they talk about all these gods and this and that, and I call them mythical because I don't know if they ever existed the way the stories were told, but just something fictional about them, depicting them, talking about them, just the fantasy kind of.
Yeah, and there's some really great like young adult novels actually that kind of like play on that.
Yeah.
So there's a Nigerian American author, Tommy
Adeyemi, Children of Blood and Bones.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've read the first two, and I'm always checking her website and her social to be like,
coming out.
When is the next one? And that's a really fun like entry point.
Yeah.
Because obviously she pulls on a lot of Yoruba history and
and all those beliefs and stuff like that. Yeah. So I'd like to see more of those sort of historical.
But they're gonna become films.
I heard. Yeah. I look forward to that. And although it's not like, Nigerian history, but it does tell you something, because it makes reference to things that we're going to recognize, that Nigerians will recognize.
Absolutely.
And I think it's an introduction to learning about things. So I'd like to see more biopics on different people. Even like political figures. I wonder how that's going to work. Imagine someone just creating a biopic of Abacha or of MK Abiola, or even like Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, of Ken Saro-Wiwa, of Fela, of all the people we've talked about. Or, do you know an idea I had recently, and I was thinking, should I share with the people? Should I share it or should I keep it? No. So it's basically like, like The Crown.
Yeah.
It's kind of like around the royal family, but in that story are the sub-stories of other people that you learn. I don't know, have you watched The Crown?
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like having a similar sort of play where maybe a political event is like the center of the story, but around it is the opportunity to learn of all the other sub-stories that were happening around the time, and getting to like being introduced to all these different people and learning about them. And actually the other day I was listening to an interview by a filmmaker, and people have been talking about, the whole, it's almost like there's this whole recycling of stories in Nollywood, and it's almost like comedy. The comedy is the genre that really sells the most. And the question is, are Nigerians ready for other there's a necessity for other types of genre to gain ground, but the question really is, are Nigerians ready for that sort of...
Of course they
They-
are.
but will they go to the cinema and watch it? Is it gonna gross as much income as the other?
It may not gross as much income, but I feel as though at the beginning of any industry or when you're venturing into a new area, it's not necessarily about, you have to sometimes get out of your mind about like trying to make a profit. You're trying to get the content out there and build a community.
So it's a passion project. You have to have the passion in mind as opposed to the money. Because when you think about it's a business, right? Even trying to like get any sort of investor, they're going to be asking you like, what's our return? And if you're not ready to engage in that, then you need to be ready for it to be a passion project.
Well, that's a question though around infrastructure and like grant funding. In the UK, there's a system for that.
Yeah.
So that's what needs to happen. I mean, I don't really know what the grant funding situation is for the arts in Nigeria, but actually there's an interesting art piece documentary of Daughters of Chibok. And it's a VR virtual reality experience that won best VR story at Venice Film Festival in 2019. And we need projects like that. To go to festivals. And go on that market and then be seen by potential investors.
Yeah.
So
we need more of that. Maybe we can produce something.
One day is one day.
Something. One day. Watch out, guys. A production from the stable of Lara and Evelyn. But another thing I was thinking of, if there was like a historical figure from past history that just one that you would love to meet, who would it?
Speaking at Nigeria.
Nigerian historical figure. We don't care about any other history. While you're thinking about it, I have one in mind.
Okay.
I think I'd like to... Are there a few? The one that comes to mind immediately is Ajayi Crowther.
Okay.
Bishop Samuel Ajayi Crowther. And just because of his story of like how he, from getting into slavery... Because I think when I think of Nigeria's history, the whole... slavery, like the time of slavery and stuff, and how it impacted Nigerians. Obviously it wasn't Nigeria at the time, it was like Yoruba Kingdom, whatever kingdom, all these other kingdoms, but how it affected the geography that is now known as Nigeria, it's not really well known. But I think Bishop Samuel Ajayi Crowther is one of the figures of Nigeria's history that I know of that had this sort of journey of going into slavery, being taken away from his parents, going into slavery. The boats or the ship was stopped halfway. It made his way to Sierra Leone. Then somehow, he was part of this missionary group, made it back to Nigeria. And then he was like one of the founding fathers of the missionary, journeys in Nigeria and translating the Bible, contributing to the Yoruba language Bible. And even just like the establishment of education in certain parts of Nigeria and all that stuff. And I think for me, it would just be like really interesting to sit with him and just to like, because he also had histories of like, there were moments of like political, because when he had to work with like all the English missionaries and, the work they were doing in Africa and the whole politics and all that stuff, I'd like to just kind of sit down with him and understand like, because he was able to eventually trace back his mother from when it's just like, this man had many lives, man. He had many lives, and I want to understand just what he went through and see things from his own eyes, just because that's probably as far back in history that I know of that I can think of somebody who would have a lot to say that cuts across different time periods.
Okay.
In a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of one now. I suppose though, for me, I suppose I'm always just interested to know like the experience of like the everyday person. I'm actually quite interested in the mundane of like how people behave and their everyday like activities. I just I like to like observe people.
Are you a people watcher?
Yeah, I actually really like to people watch. I could like sit in a park and I'm just, looking at people, wondering what their story is, or like why have they worn the clothes that they have today, and why did they choose to eat that sandwich, or something like that. So for me, I suppose it's not even necessarily. I would obviously like having a time machine and going back and like witnessing like how did people move, what did their voices sound like, how did they stand before other people. I mean, that stuff I always find really interesting because we have our interpretation. We have films and not documentary, but films and shows of today. You're doing an interpretation of what you think the past was like, but it's not actually what the past was like.
Yeah.
That's why I really love documentaries, because you are capturing the reality. And usually the reality is actually even far more interesting than the fiction that we're watching. So that's something that I wish I could do. I would love to. I mean, there are parts of my history where I wouldn't want to see certain things, but watching people, I mean, you can do it now, but
Are you glad you were born in this generation?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's this, because sometimes I think about, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I was born in this day and age, man. Because when I reflect on some of the hardships and just how life was generally in some eras, I'm just like, I'm glad I was born for such a time as this. I'm glad I was born in a time. And I'm particularly glad I was born in the period, not just so much like I was born in the modern, like in the 21st century, but even being born in the late 80s, where I can say I experienced certain things of the olden days, but then I was also growing up into the newness of all the things. And it's like now we're growing into the future of goodness knows what the future holds. And it's like, I feel like I've had the best of a few worlds. And I'm glad that I'm born at a time when technology is what it is, where, despite the distance between families, sometimes I know I can get on a plane and in 7 hours I can see my loved ones.
Yeah.
If I have the money. Yeah, there's just many things, because I think I'm glad that I get to choose things for myself as a woman, being born a woman as well in this day and age. I'm like, goodness, I don't know what it would have been like born a woman in 1900s or in the 1800s or whatever it was. Being African woman as well. Yeah, so there are many things that makes me glad that I'm part of history as it is now.
That's interesting.
Some people say, oh, I wish I was born in the 20s. Like, I wish I'd seen, like, I don't,
because our life was not...
Yeah. There's some people like, oh, I just love...
The experience for people who look like us in the 20s was not all that. I think that's an interesting thing with what, like, entertainment can do, because it can really provide this romanticized version of the past. I'm glad that, I'm very glad for the time that I was born, the place that I was born, especially in that I'm really lucky to be in a position where I know that there's different ways of being.
Yeah.
Especially as somebody who has, like a multi-ethnic background, being able to look at different communities and then some of the assumptions or judgments or prejudices that different communities have of each other, and then have that perspective and be like, both sides have got it wrong, I mean, like, that's not how, things are. I think I'm very, very grateful for that. And that's due to increasingly like globalized nation and people migrating. Our people have migrated a lot. So I'm very grateful for that. I really like the fact that I can like have a sober view as well. So I can look at Britain or Nigeria or wherever and be like sober about any sort of critique or celebration
Yeah,
of a
yeah.
people.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's such a luxury, to use that word loosely, just being able to access these things when I compare it to like people who lived before us. I mean, there are people even like I was hearing a 80-something-year-old lady speak, and she was talking about how she struggles with even using apart from the fact that she's really old and all that stuff, but just like people having to grapple with technology now who have lived through like World War II, and they've lived through like really times of great recessions and things like that. And I guess maybe they've had. It's interesting what life is like for them. It'll be interesting to hear how they view life and what it's like. But yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm glad I'm here for this moment. But I guess, what are we looking forward to for the future?
Yeah, for the future and on this podcast, there are some areas of exploration that I would really like to get into. I would love to talk more about, the history of various tribes of Nigeria. So that would be really, really fun. Yeah. Talk about, you have the known and prominent tribes, the Yoruba tribe, Igbo tribe, Hausa, but then some of the more unknown
Yeah,
tribes and like shine a spotlight on those also
yeah.
would be really, really.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just trying to hoping that we gain more exposure to different people, and eventually being able to influence how Nigeria treats history, how Nigeria engages with history. And what I mean by that, in the sense of like, at the moment, I understand that even like history is still not a part of the curriculum. I'd like the government to get to a point where the Nigerian government engages us in producing contents for Nigerian history, for education, for the young people. Because now everything is like book, book, book. People are not really reading books like that anymore. I mean, I say that loosely, but in the sense that you can learn via many mediums.
Yeah.
So we can write materials, but we can also produce videos and produce clips that children can listen to, people can watch, and all of these things. And it's going to require investment. And yeah, but I think in terms of content that I would like to talk about more on the podcast is, I don't know. I was gonna say, I don't know why I've got this thing with the mythical figures, but because I know that it's such a thing in Nigeria. But I think I would like to talk about.
Well, the myth thing is interesting because with myths, obviously it's pointing to a greater theme or value or belief.
Yeah.
And that's always really interesting to investigate. We've talked about myth making.
Yeah. And actually, it's a great part of like people thinking of how the tribes were formed. So there's always this argument on this group on Facebook on how the Yoruba nation came out of Benin, and is it Oduduwa, or is it from Benin Kingdom, or is it this, or is it that? I'm just like, oh crikey, who knows where the Yoruba kingdom came from, and how there's a bit of similarity even in the languages of the Yoruba people and the Sakiri people and this and that, and so it'd be quite nice to learn about, to kind of like talk about that and find out more about. I don't know, the world is our oyster, really. There's so much to explore. So it'll be good for our listeners to be part of this journey with us as we continue to learn and explore Nigerian history in all its various forms and in all its glory.
Yes, in all its glory.
But yeah, hopefully we've shared a bit of ourselves and the listeners have gotten to know us a bit more.
Yeah.
You look like you're you're ready for bed. You're like, yeah. Yeah. So
we're keeping it real on this pod,
that is the commitment that we are making, for producing this podcast. But yes, no, thank you guys. That's why you need to listen. You need to follow us on all our platforms. You need to share, like, subscribe. You need to come. I know we're asking a lot of you guys, but please support our ministry. Encourage us. Help us. We're begging.
I love that you say that. Support the ministry. That's another hashtag for the merch.
Support the ministry. Oh, listen. Rugged optimism. Support the ministry.
Okay, everyone. I'm Evelyn.
And I'm Lara. Until we come your way next time.
Bye.